live in a single-family home in an American suburb. I'm a tradwife. I'm somewhere between 18 and 45, but you'll never know for sure. Before I wake the children for Bible study, I begin a load of laundry and bake a loaf of bread. I believe in taking care of myself and a balanced diet and a rigorous exercise routine. I apply a fine layer of beef tallow moisturizer all over my body and hands. Finally, I complete the traditional morning shed. There is an idea of a tradwife, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me. And though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel my flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. Tradwives are a cliche at this point. Much like my American Psycho intro, can't catch me, smug intellectuals. I'm one of you. There's nothing you can say about me that I don't already say about myself. I'm just like you, but worse. Now you're sentient, breathing, and on the internet, so you probably already know what a tradwife is, but just in case. Per Merriam-Webster, a tradwife is a married woman who embraces gender roles and values. The word is particularly used for a young woman who chooses to be a homemaker and shares her lifestyle online. It is closely associated with a 2020 social media trend, widely viewed as ultra-conservative. Now, I will quibble with that definition in a moment. I don't think it's wrong, I just think it's incomplete. Suffice it to say, the tradwife performs a 1950s commercial ideal with a hearty dose of, pioneer woman. So our question is not so much what are tradwives, rather, why are tradwives? What is the reason to adopt the tradwife lifestyle? What is the need one is trying to fulfill by being trad? In many ways, my life looks very much like the tradwife life. I do the cooking, I do the cleaning, I do the laundry, I garden. I have a lot of linen dresses. My husband makes all the money. I hit a lot of the bullet points, but there are two major exceptions. Number one, I won't get into that much. We don't have kids and we don't want them. Not all tradwives are mothers, but there is a general understanding that that is either the goal or the ideal. Number two, we have completely different political orientations. I'm a leftist, I'm a feminist, and I have a career, albeit an unconventional one, where I don't make very much money lately. So as someone who has a lot in common with tradwives aesthetically and practically, yet wildly differs from them politically and socially, I do think I have a little bit of insight on the reasons behind the tradwife ways. First of all, I absolutely understand the romantic or escapist appeal. I think a lot of people first encounter tradwives through their various aesthetic offshoots. I know I did. In early COVID lockdown, I was entranced by all manner of cottagecore content. At the time, I only had a couple of houseplants. So the idea of having land, of growing flowers and vegetables and feeding the wildlife was very appealing to me. It was all pretty women in pretty dresses, baking pretty bread in pretty kitchens, and I get it. It was very soothing, and pieces of it felt attainable, even locked inside, especially as I was, for the first time in my adult life, not hustling at multiple soul-sucking day jobs or really doing very much to pursue my goals as an artist. My life got a lot slower, and I was looking for models for how to make that work for me. And I was also living with a partner for the very first time. My now husband and I moved in together just a little bit before COVID lockdown. And I don't know, we'd been long distance for a long time, and I was excited for a little domestic bliss. Sue me. So my first forays into the world of tradwives, albeit tangentially, were a desire for escapism, stability, and a kind of roadmap to follow. Like a vision board. So your cottagecore tradwife is a very popular offshoot, but there's more. You've got your kitchen goddesses, your do-it-all supermoms, your Pilates princesses. It recruits elements from the clean girl and the trophy wife and the old money aesthetics. Now, none of these things are necessarily nefarious on their own. I personally like a lot of things about some of these aesthetics aesthetically, but we can't ignore the ways these things are influenced by white supremacy, a worship of wealth. A Media Matters study found that people interacting with tradwife content were much more likely to be served far-right and conspiracy theory content. Often, influencers and creators in these spaces brand themselves as apolitical or even literally silent. Now, that's a choice that anyone is free to make. But the pattern of being silent and apolitical in a climate of rising fascism is very loud indeed. And beyond its general tendency towards the right and conservatism, I do think that there is one very important reason for that political silence. In this day and age, it's not nearly enough for me to stretch my pennies by being thrifty at the grocery store. The modern traditional woman has a much more important tool at her disposal: social media monetization and direct sales. Now you can get paid merely by perpetuating the fantasy of being you. Well, not you, but the better version of you. Performing femininity and domestic excellence has never been more profitable. The tradwife has become a certified industry with celebrities and success stories of its own. You don't even have to be a wife to get a piece of the action. Any woman with a cell phone, a domestic space, and a pretty face can grift to her heart's content in the booming tradwife ecosystem. They remain socially and politically silent, not just to alienate viewers, but to alienate advertisers. If you want to be about that tradwife grift, you have got to be advertiser friendly. Well, sure, maybe your husband is dragging protesters out of school board meetings or hosting an edgy podcast, but not you. You're just baking cookies. The nice white woman has long been a critical line of defense for white supremacy and the far right. And a bit of performative Christianity doesn't hurt either. Now, to be clear, while the American megachurch evangelical is generally a dangerous hypocrite, this is not a criticism of Christianity or of Christians. I personally fuck with Jesus. He had cool friends and he did smart stuff and he said nice things. I just personally don't believe that he's God, which is also how I feel about Bernie Sanders, so. But the image of the pure, Christian, happy, nurturing, barefoot tradwife does a lot for the optics of the far right, conservatism, and their traditional values. Now, why do I keep putting trad and traditional in scare quotes? Well, I guess because traditional to whom? The nuclear family, mommy, daddy, and babies living together in isolation from other family and community members, is not traditional to this land, to the indigenous people of North America, nor is it traditional in much of Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Southern Europe. But the earliest examples of the nuclear family being traditional were in Germany and England, so side-eye. And this idea that women are supposed to be at home is based on an ideal at best and a fantasy at worst. Women have always worked outside of the home, including married women, especially lower and working class women. In 1890, approximately 10% of married women held paying jobs outside of the home. In the following 100 years, the percentage of women working outside of the home climbed to its peak of 60% in 1999. While that has now leveled out with a slight decline, there were two noticeable dips to about 56% in recent history: the 2008 recession and the COVID-19 lockdowns. So for years before I was even born, a majority of women have worked outside of the home. The tradwife aesthetic and lifestyle have their roots in an idealized version of the 1950s, a time during which, in reality, over 30% of women worked outside the home. So I think that we can safely conclude that the traditional label is based on two things. Number one, an idealized social norm for upper middle class white families, and 1950s propaganda and advertisements designed to sell products to women and win the culture war against the commies. Sound familiar? The tradwife life has always been a sales tactic. So I think the second reason that a lot of people are drawn to the tradwife life is because of the economic stability and opportunity it potentially affords them, whether that be a sincere social media career or drop shipping and grift. My calendar is clear. My conscience is not. My house, spotless. My worldview, shattered. Class trader, more like, yeah. I cry a lot. Oh yeah. Oh, and this is my confessional. If there are any other YouTubers out there who want to start a reality TV style feud with me, hit me up. I could use the PR and it sounds fun. Anyway, I'm gonna do something I hardly ever do on this channel and talk about me. So I became a housewife kind of by accident. It was COVID, the 2020 lockdowns. Up until that point, I had been working multiple day job, side hustle gigs. I was self-employed while also auditioning and doing singing gigs and taking acting classes. Classic. I had just moved in with my now husband and he'd gotten a new job. We had more money than we'd had before. We did the math and we sort of decided, you know, my day job is not at all essential. So during these couple of weeks, I can hit pause on my day job. Then obviously lockdowns and restrictions went on a lot longer than anyone could have expected. By the time it would have made sense for me to go back to my day job, he was earning even more money. What I made on my day jobs was like laughably small compared to what he made in his salary, and it would not have positively impacted our lives at all. So I just never went back. And I should have felt gratitude and relief and freedom. And I did. But mainly, I felt guilt and shame. I had leapt tax brackets away from where I had been my entire working adult life, and I did absolutely fuck all to earn it. I felt very lucky, but I did not feel deserving. And I had a little bit of an identity crisis, and to be totally honest with you, I have not completely worked all the way through my thoughts and feelings on this one. It was a huge life change. At that time in 2020, when I stopped working, my only real frame of reference for housewives was trashy reality TV. Obviously, those women are much wealthier, have totally different social lives than I have, and are actively performing characters for the camera. But the archetype of the housewife made me feel shallow and selfish and lazy and entitled. I felt a lot of pressure to do something to prove that I deserved it or to earn it in some way. But like, the truth is, the whole time I really did do a lot of labor. It was just domestic and emotional labor. And to be very clear, my husband has never said or done anything to make me feel any of those negative, sad feelings. They all came from my own head and my own insecurities. The reason I felt those things was probably just because I was not at all used to meeting my financial needs without struggle. And it felt weird. And that brings us to the final, and I think maybe the most important why of Tradwives. It is an escape from hustle culture, from the grind, from the rat race. It's an escape from financial struggle. It is a full, safe life where, yeah, sure, you have to budget. You can't have a Birkin, but you don't have to constantly be worrying about money. And it is an arrangement that is relatively uncommon. Remember how we talked about women's participation in the workforce rising steadily from the 1890s to the 1990s? Men's participation in the workforce has done the opposite. While not as steep of a line graph, men's participation in the workforce has dropped from about 86% at the end of World War II down to about 68% today. Inflation is out of control. Housing, rent, education, childcare, all of that has gotten vastly more expensive, completely out of pace with wages. And especially for women who want to have children, I completely understand the appeal of having a working partner who earns enough for you to stay at home with your children, not only so that you can bond with your children, but because the cost of childcare is often just as much money as you would be bringing in your job. So you have to make the choice between staying at your job and pouring your entire income into your child's daycare so that you can continue your work history and building your work relationships and advancing your career, or not having a job anymore, losing all of that mobility and freedom in order to be able to afford being a stay-at-home caregiver for your child. So while I understand the economic desire for the trad life, I also understand that this arrangement is difficult and uncommon because of the sorry state of our economy right now. And I also understand how that can be a very serious risk to the freedom, autonomy, and future work prospects of the parent who chooses to stay home. I believe in my bones that underneath all of the aesthetic stuff, underneath the potential of social media success, even underneath the desire for a traditional arrangement, is a desire to be free or safe from capitalism. And I can tell you, existential angst aside, it's fucking great. So much of my anxiety and stress that I blamed on myself and thought was chemical or thought was just me being lazy and neurotic, it was financial anxiety. It was unmet needs It was scarcity. And I think every single person in this country deserves the safety that I feel. And it makes me so mad that we can't distribute money better, because I've done the numbers. And it would not be impossible for every person in this country to live a life with safety like mine, with security like mine. It's possible. And I'm angry that we don't do it. I am so angry that for so many women, the best way to get health care and a safe place to sleep is to get married to some guy. So listen, do what you gotta do to survive. Absolutely no shame. But having lived several very different economic realities, for me, I can safely say that I would absolutely rather be struggling with the person that I love than be comfortable with someone who doesn't respect me. Life is long, marriage is a risk, and if you choose to give anything up in order to be married, there's no guarantee you'll get it back. As with most things, my philosophy is that we should be trying to fix the system that keeps people away from economic safety and not trying to save ourselves by latching on to someone who can be our hero. Money is important, but for my money's not enough. So I'm actually not gonna wrap this one up with a big picture conclusion. Despite all of the criticisms I have, my feelings on this topic are that it is ultimately kind of complex. So my goal with this video isn't to tell anybody what to think or what to feel or how to live their life. And it is in fact basically the exact opposite. There are so many pieces to take apart and understand when it comes to the world of tradwifery. My only big picture ask is that you seriously consider the ways in which it feeds into white supremacy, capitalism, you know, my enemies. So instead I'm going to give you some teeny tiny, very practical advice. This is not an ad. This is Fair Play by Eve Rodsky, and it comes with these cards. Not an ad. You could absolutely make your own version of this. You don't need to buy the physical cards. I'm sure you could find a list somewhere on the internet. My husband read the book. He took on the responsibility of sort of, here's how the game works. And you get these cards. Here, let me show you some examples. So these are some of my cards. I have the laundry card. I have the donations. A lot of these cards are for kids, and we don't have kids, but we do use some of them for our dogs. I have a dog who needs a bath once a week for his skin conditioner. So I have bathing and grooming for the kids, which, you know, it's for our kids. One thing I really like about the system that she introduces is that everybody is fully responsible for their task. And I know I used to get really frustrated when I felt like I had to be the task manager for everything and I became the like make a list person. We don't have that in our house anymore, thank fucking God. So he is completely responsible for his tasks. I'm completely responsible for my tasks. So like for grocery shopping, I'm responsible for keeping track of what's low in the fridge, keeping track of what's low in the pantry, picking the recipes I'm going to cook during the week and making sure that all of those ingredients go on the grocery list. I'm also responsible for going to the grocery store and putting the groceries away. I was in charge of finding an app that my husband could easily use and throw things on the list if it's something that he thought of while he was at work and he didn't want to forget. So I'm completely responsible for all of it, but then we also find ways to make it work for one another. We started in the beginning doing like weekly check-ins to see like what's working, what's not working, do we need to redivide things? And now we basically just every now and then we'll have a check-in about it. I love the way it makes everything feel like something you decided on together and not something that you're just sort of arbitrarily expected to do. I know that whenever I feel like something is just sort of arbitrarily expected of me because I'm a woman or I'm the one who stays home, it just pisses me off. Think of myself as basically like the last one of my friends to wind up being a housewife. Like on paper, it is not very compatible with my whole deal. But like in reality, when my husband and I actually sat down and talked about the things that we liked to do, that we felt we were good at, that we were willing to do, a lot of it fell along gender lines. Not all the way, but like a surprising number of things are extremely stereotypical. And if that had not been a conversation, it would make me feel like shit. It would make me feel trapped. It would make me feel ashamed. It would make me feel stuck. It would make me feel resentful. But because we came to those conclusions through actual intentional conversations, and it feels fair. It's an ongoing conversation. It's not something that I do because I'm supposed to. It's something that we both do because we agreed to. Not to be too Hallmark about it, but I really do believe that you can communicate your way to a better life. But what do I know? I'm just a housewife. Thank you everybody for watching. Past week I just passed 2,000 subscribers, so my hugest thanks and gratitude to everybody who has watched and subscribed and shared. He's the reason the video was late this week. He's a very old man and he had a loose tooth.